Most people have heard the same advice for years. If you expect higher taxes later, then you should convert your pre-tax accounts or IRAs to Roth today. If you expect lower taxes later, you should keep it in the traditional account. But Vanguard's latest research shows that the truth isn't that simple. I'm your host, Eli Freeman, a certified financial planner, and as always, let's look at the data. For decades, Roth conversion decisions have been framed around a single comparison: your current tax rate versus your future tax rate. And the logic is straightforward: pay taxes now or pay them later. But Vanguard's new framework introduces something more precise. They call it the break-even tax rate, or BETR, better. Today, I'm going to break down a few of the parts of this BETR strategy, but stick around to the end for a few areas that I think that they fail to reference that could make Roth conversions even more compelling. The better strategy is the future tax rate that would make you indifferent about converting or not converting. If your actual future tax rate ends up above the break-even that they design, the Roth conversion wins. If it's below, you'd be better off leaving the money in your traditional IRA. And that's the concept. But the data behind this gets pretty interesting. Vanguard starts with a simple case. If you invest $7,000 in a traditional IRA and another $7,000 in a Roth, both earning 6% per year for 20 years, and your tax rate never changes, both end up with the same after-tax value. That's because in the Roth, you pay taxes up front, and in the traditional IRA, you pay them at withdrawal. Change the future tax rate though, and the math shifts. Higher future tax rates make the Roth more valuable. Lower future rates make the traditional look better. But that analysis leaves out a lot of real-world nuance. The better approach adds depth. It factors in things like where you pay the conversion taxes from, whether your IRA has any after-tax basis, and whether converting opens the door to future backdoor Roth contributions. Vanguard found that depending on those factors, a Roth conversion can make sense even if your future tax rate ends up lower than it is today. And that's a big idea. For example, if you can pay the conversion tax from a taxable account instead of from the IRA itself, you're effectively moving extra dollars into a tax-free environment. That shifts your break-even tax rate lower. And here's the data behind that. If you pay the tax from the IRA, the better equals your current tax rate, say 35%. If you pay it from a tax-efficient taxable portfolio, the better falls to around 30%. And from a tax-inefficient taxable portfolio, it drops to 23%. And even if you pay it from a low-yield cash account, it can fall to as low as 14%. In other words, using taxable money to pay the conversion tax can make a Roth worthwhile even if your future tax rate drops by 10 points or more. Vanguard's case study makes this clear by using an example: Jill. She's in the 35% tax bracket today and expects to be in the 24% tax bracket when she retires in 20 years. Under the usual or traditional logic, she should not convert because her future tax rate would be lower. But when her advisor runs the better calculation, the break-even rate is 23.3%. Since her future tax rate of 24% is higher than the 23.3%, the conversion actually improves her after-tax wealth. And that's the power of measuring with data instead of rules of thumb. Vanguard also finds that the longer your investment horizon, the more attractive it becomes to pay conversion taxes from a taxable account. Think your bank account or a non-qualified account. Each additional year shields more growth from taxation, lowering the break-even rate even further. So, for younger investors or those with long compounding horizons, paying the tax now can create decades of tax-free growth later. The paper also highlights two other major variables. First is non-taxable basis in an IRA. If part of your traditional IRA is after tax, only the pre-tax portion is taxed at conversion, and that lowers your better rate dramatically. In Vanguard's model with a 50% basis, the better fell by about 40%, making conversions even more attractive for investors who expect substantially lower tax rates in retirement. Second is backdoor Roth contributions. For high-income earners who can't contribute directly to a Roth, converting today can open the doors to years of future backdoor Roth deposits. Once those future contributions are factored in, the better falls even further, sometimes to the low 20s or even teens on the 35% bracket, making conversion even more compelling. And in real life, most people don't invest in their IRAs with after-tax dollars. I know this. So I consider this more of a moot point. But Vanguard summarized a practical checklist for investors and advisors. Calculate your BETR by considering how you'll pay the conversion tax, how much after-tax basis is in your IRA, and whether you plan future backdoor Roth contributions. You should compare your expected future tax rates to your BETR. If it's higher, conversion may make sense. And remember, conversions don't have to be an all or nothing thing. Doing them gradually over several tax years can help keep you in lower brackets and smooth out the tax impact. And timing it matters. Converting in lower income years or during market downturns or when you have cash that's in taxable account can enhance the results of conversion. The key takeaways from Vanguard are that converting isn't just a tax bracket question, and conversions can be beneficial even if you're in the same tax bracket projected into the future. However, there are a few areas that I would make a case that Vanguard missed, even more components that make conversions even more compelling for investors. The first of which is how Social Security is taxed. Social Security is actually tax-free if you have no other forms of income. So if someone converts in the 24% tax bracket, then when they're retired, they move into the 0% tax bracket with their Social Security. That can be a massive tax savings, and they didn't mention that. Another way that conversions can add value is that Vanguard didn't include avoiding Medicare penalties. If someone has a very large IRA or 401k balance, they will be forced to distribute large amounts when required distributions kick in. At that point, sometimes this can cause Medicare penalties to really add up, which can cost you thousands and thousands of dollars in retirement because of the higher tax on Medicare. One final point for conversions that Vanguard did not reference is the ability for conversions to protect your spouse and your beneficiaries when someone passes away. When someone passes away, their surviving spouse loses the married filing jointly tax code, and Medicare penalty amounts decrease, which can quickly cause someone to move into a higher tax bracket and cause Medicare penalties because they've lost the ability to file their tax return as a married couple. Vanguard's conclusion isn't that everyone should rush to convert to Roths. Instead, the takeaway is that Roth conversions are more valuable than the old school or traditional analysis suggests. By paying attention to your break-even tax rate and funding conversions intelligently, you can shift more of your retirement wealth into a tax-free environment, even if future tax rates fall. So the next time that you hear, "Don't convert unless you expect higher tax rates later," remember, the data says otherwise. Because as Vanguard shows, the question isn't just as simple as will my taxes be higher in the future? It's how low would they have to go before Roth conversion stops making sense? That's your break-even tax rate. And it's changing how investors think about Roth conversions. If you enjoyed this video, you might enjoy some of my other videos. The most recent video I did before this was about Social Security, and you can click here if you want to watch that.